Wang, over here.
Sorry, Huang is indisposed at the moment. Ricardo Guzman, you are under arrest for the murder of Neil Jensen. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
Mr. Guzman doesn't dispute the cockfighting charges. We're prepared to plead guilty on that one.
Está insultando la República Dominica.
Let me. My client is not a murderer, Mr. McCoy. Mr. Jensen died as a result of an accident.
An accident?
He attempted to handle an armed bird, and he lost control of it.
Really? Unbelievable. A man gets carved up like a side of beef. Guzman lets him slowly bleed to death, then dumps him on a doorstep and expects to walk away.
I checked with the Dominican consulate.
And?
He's wanted there for drug running and armed robbery.
Well, I want him here for murder.
Is it possible it really was an accident?
Does it matter? Neil Jensen didn't have to die. Guzman had 2 hours to get help and he callously stood by. Murder 2. Depraved indifference.
Mr. Guzman, when did you first meet Neil Jensen?
Maybe a year ago, I guess.
Who initiated the relationship? You or him?
He did. I didn't want to have no part of him, man. Not at first. What I do, I gotta be careful who I let in. Can bring trouble, you know? Especially a white guy.
Mr. Jensen came to you with an offer, is that right?
Yeah, he had a bird and he wanted me to help him raise it and fight it.
And at first you said no?
That's right. Objection! Asked and answered.
Sustained. Strike that.
What convinced you to take Neil Jensen under your wing, as it were, in spite of your suspicions?
He knew cockfighting ain't how they make it out to be, you know?
It's a more civilized practice than people realize, you mean?
Objection, leading.
Sustained. Strike that.
What sort of sentiments did Mr. Jensen express to you?
Well, like, cocking's a real sport. It takes dedication and discipline. And you know, it can teach you a lot about life if you let it.
So you agreed to keep the bird and help him raise it?
See, together we raised El Jefe, and together we conditioned him to fight. He was a good bird.
Why don't you tell us, in your own words, what happened on the night of Tuesday, May 5th?
Well, Neil come in that night really keyed up, man, like super keyed up. He was jumping all around. I think maybe he was on something. Objection! Speculation!
Sustained. Strike that from the record. Watch yourself, Mr. Guzman. Please confine your description to actual events.
Go on.
Well, he was excited, you know, because El Jefe was finally gonna fight. There were some other birds up first, but he couldn't sit and watch, man, pacing around, till his turn finally came. Okay, I tell him, I'm the handler. I'm experienced at this stuff. Let me do it.
Get the bird into the ring.
The pit, yeah. It could be dangerous, you know, especially with the long heel.
A long blade attached to the rooster's spur.
Right, but Neil wouldn't hear nothing I was saying, man. Being he was a rider, he had to do everything himself. Well, anyway, he's yelling about how he had to be the one to handle El Jefe. I told him don't. I ordered him even, but he really got in my face about it, man, so I had to back down. Then he went for the rooster, like he was going for a football or something. Grabbed it around the neck. You understand, this is a bird was being conditioned to fight. The bird goes crazy.
It attacked Neil Jensen. Naturally, you were horrified.
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
How did you feel?
Horrified, naturally. I made a grab for the bird and got it.
Putting yourself in considerable danger in the process, I imagine.
Objection. Leading. Counsel is putting words in the witness's mouth.
Withdrawn.
But by the time I got the rooster under control, the damage was done.
I see. So what then? What did you do for him?
I wrap a blanket around him to try stop the bleeding, you know?
Did you think to take him to the hospital?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do, but he told me not to. He wanted me to take him home.
Mr. Jensen asked you to take him home.
Mm-hmm. His wounds, I mean, he was cut up pretty bad, but not so bad as all that. He should have pulled through, no problem.
Objection. No expert knowledge. Considering the outcome, I think we can conclude that Mr. Guzman's assessment of the situation is off.
Sustained. Facts only, Mr. Guzman.
You swore on the Bible you'd tell the truth, Mr. Guzman.
I'm telling the truth. I panicked maybe. You would have done the same. But I did what Neil asked me to do. What I thought would save his life.
Your witness, Mr. McCoy.
Mr. Guzman. The incident in question occurred on the night of May 5th.
That's right. Maybe 1:45.
1:45. And you say you acted to save him?
Of course I acted. I tried to help him right there, and when I couldn't help him, I took him home, like he asked me to.
But there's a problem here. The 911 call is time-stamped 4:03. 2 hours after the incident, Mr. Guzman. Under the circumstances, it's fair to ask, couldn't your response have been a little more prompt?
Hijos de puta mentirosos.
I'm sorry, Mr. Guzman.
It's a mistake. Someone's not telling the truth.
Are you suggesting 911 got the time wrong?
Or somebody.
You knew it was dangerous for Neil Jensen to handle his own rooster.
Sure, it was dangerous. When those birds are ready to fight, man, they're ready to fight.
Then why didn't you stop him?
I tried, man, but like I said, he wouldn't take no for an answer.
Mr. Guzman, you took Mr. Jensen into your confidence, initiated him into your illegal activities. Knowing your new disciple was a writer, didn't you worry that he'd give the game away, expose your ring, and force you to shut down operations?
Well, sure I was worried, but he promised me he'd keep quiet, and he wouldn't write anything neither, unless I okayed it first.
And you trusted him?
Yeah, he respected me, man.
Well, it doesn't seem like he respected you very much on the night he died. I mean, he defied you. He disobeyed your orders to stay away from the rooster.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Let's get back to those final moments, shall we? Maybe this time we can get the facts straight. You drove Neil Jensen home.
Like he asked me to.
And you dropped him off at the door. What time was that? 4 o'clock?
More like 2.
Did you stay with him till he was safely inside?
No.
No. You dumped him there and took off. Why, Mr. Guzman?
I heard a baby crying as I was coming up the walk with Neil, and I saw a light turn on, so I knew she was up. I was sure she was gonna come down and get Neil.
Yes?
But I didn't want to have to be there and explain it all to her, you know?
No, I expect you didn't. No further questions. Want to take this one, Abby?
The people call Ellie Jensen to the witness stand. Mrs. Jensen, tell us how you discovered your husband on the night in question. Well, I heard a sort of a thunk coming from outside the front door. Did it wake you up? No. No, it wasn't loud enough for that, but luckily I was awake. Noah, my baby, had just waked me for his usual feeding. That at least conforms to Mr. Guzman's testimony. What condition was your husband in when you found him? It was horrible. He was covered in blood, and he had this look in his eyes like he knew he was dying. I kept saying, "Who did this to you? Who did this to you?" But all he could do was move his mouth. I think he was saying, "I'm sorry." And there was nobody with him? Nobody. He was all alone. Now this is crucial. Mrs. Jensen, what time did you discover your husband? Just before 4 a.m. You're absolutely sure? Yes. I glanced at the clock when my baby cried at 5 minutes to. He always wakes up at the same time. Thank you, Mrs. Jensen.
So you finally come around, eh, Harlan?
If that's the way you want to look at it, Jack.
Great. What are you looking for?
No jail time. Mr. Guzman pays a fine and does 12 months probation.
Come on, he killed a man.
Actually, a rooster killed a man.
He sat idly by for 2 hours and let an innocent man bleed to death. So he can go right back to running cockfights? No deal, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Ricardo Guzman will never win any good citizenship awards. He's a devotee of cockfighting, a sport which many, no doubt, many of you here in the jury consider barbaric and inhumane. But it's important to appreciate that the defendant is the product of another culture. We mustn't let cultural differences blind us to his essential humanity. Consider Mr. Guzman's relationship with the deceased. He agreed to act as Mr. Jensen's mentor, not for money, but through mutual love of the sport. For many months, he patiently worked with him and trained with him. He became Mr. Jensen's mentor and his friend. And when the accident occurred, Mr. Guzman reacted as a friend would react, with care and concern. Perhaps he made the wrong decision in taking the injured man home. Perhaps you or I would have gone straight to the hospital. But remember, Mr. Guzman is an immigrant, an outsider, with an outsider's suspicion of big institutions. My client has lost a friend, perhaps as the result of his own mistake, and for that, he will suffer for the rest of his life. But does he deserve to go to jail? Good people of the jury, I beg you, let's not compound one error with another.
Two hours. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. 2 hours. 2 hours between the time Neil Jensen was stabbed repeatedly, and the time the accused saw fit to do something about it. 2 hours of agony, of Mr. Jensen bleeding, losing strength, crying for help, for mercy. But there was no mercy, not from Ricardo Guzman. The accused knew Neil Jensen well enough to understand the limits of their trust. If the victim had survived the attack, there would have been questions. The story would have come out. Guzman's illegal operation would have been exposed. He would have faced prosecution, or loss of livelihood at the very least. He had a lot to lose and a lot to gain by doing nothing. The legal community has a phrase for this behavior: depraved indifference. None of us was in the slaughterhouse with Ricardo Guzman and Neil Jensen. None of us knows exactly what was going on through the mind of the accused as he watched his cohort writhe on the floor. We may never know exactly why he stood and waited. And waited. But we aren't being asked to judge Mr. Guzman's motivations. We're being asked to judge his acts, or in this case, his failure to act. And in this case, I think you'll agree. Inaction speaks louder than words.
Has the jury come to a verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
In the charge of murder in the second degree, how do you find?
We find the defendant, Ricardo Guzman, guilty.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. He got what he deserved.
Not much comfort to you, I'm sure.
It won't bring Neil back, but it gives me some closure. Will you be okay? I think he'll see to it. Right on schedule as always.
Know anyone who needs a nanny?
Mrs. Jensen let you go, huh?
That figures. I'm just one more thing that reminds her of Neil. And God knows she got rid of all his other stuff. His photo albums, his collections of rare books.
Well, different people grieve in different ways.
Yeah, I think she'll be doing her grieving in Aruba. She bought tickets yesterday.
You don't suppose...
You've got a suspicious mind, Curtis. Up for a little field trip tonight?
"5 minutes to 2.
Right on schedule.
You think that means...
She couldn't bring herself to get rid of the rooster in the chicken coop, but the rooster in the house is a different story.
I'm not sure I understand.
She went up on the witness stand and told the court that she found her husband at 4 a.m.
But she told us that her baby wakes up at the same times every day, and we heard the baby wake up at 2.
So, isn't it possible that the baby could have also woken her up at 4 a.m.? We're talking about a baby here.
You don't have any proof that Ellie Jensen is lying.
Which is why we need a warrant to search her brownstone.
And just what are you hoping to find?
Mrs. Jensen mentioned that she installed a nanny cam in her nursery. Those things have timestamps on them.
She might be lying or not, but the nanny cam always tells the truth.
Fine, I'll give you a warrant to confiscate the nanny cam, but only that.
Neil? That you?
2 a.m., Mrs. Jensen. Care to tell us why you waited so long to call 911?
I wasn't thinking straight.
Clearly.
I was just so mad. He promised me he was going to stop running around like a damn teenager, wasting our money and risking his stupid neck, all for the sake of his stories. He was going to calm down and be normal, a decent husband and father. He swore. I didn't want him to die. I just wanted to teach him a lesson.
I think he learned.
Jury just came back in the Jensen case.
And?
Guilty. Man 2, 10 to 20.
Looks like PS 84 is going to have to find themselves a new principal.
Good work, gentlemen.
How about we grab lunch? You still on that diet?
Nope. Ditched the health food. And, Julia.
Right on schedule.
And I feel great.
Any preferences?
Nope, I'm up for anything. Except chicken. For some reason that doesn't appeal to me today.